my colleague Michelle. Oh, I'm not sure. Welcome everyone. My name is Susan Wallace. I'm one of the careers advisors in the Careers and Student Employment team. I'm joined by my colleague Michelle Jeffries, also in the same team, to deliver this session on working in the public or not-for-profit sectors. Sorry, I can't, my screen has stuck. I can't move the slide. There we go.
Here it is.
I'll just go through the agenda for today, which will cover off our Zoom protocol as we do, acknowledgement of country. Michelle will introduce the panelists, and then we'll proceed into the question and answers, and then follow up with career and student employment resources. So in terms of Zoom protocol, you've all been muted upon entry. This is a live recording. We may need to turn the video feed off if we are having technical issues. If you prefer not to appear on camera, please turn off your video. There will be allocated times for questions, mostly in the second half of the hour. With regards to the chat function, you can post your questions here and we will address them during the session. We also have one of our other people in the team, Nikki, who will also help answer questions as we go. Please make sure that you're comfortable with everyone seeing the questions that you post, and please address them to everyone, not privately. Be respectful of all participants. Please wait for allocated times for questions. I'll now do the acknowledgement of country. I acknowledge the traditional owners of the Macquarie University land, the Wallumattagal clan of the Darug Nation. We pay respects to the elders and knowledge holders who have and continue to share their wisdom and knowledge, nurturing and sustaining our environments, cultures, and education. Michelle, I'll hand over to you to introduce the panellists.
Thanks, Sue. I'd like to welcome Pushika Arora, who's a recent Macquarie University graduate, and she's currently working in the not-for-profit sector. We also have with us Madeline Gahan, who's a current Macquarie University student, and she's been offered a graduate role in the New South Wales Public Service. I'd also like to welcome Helen Baru, who is the CEO of Streetwork, which is a not-for-profit organisation, and Christina Lesko, who works for Beaumont People, and that organisation does a lot of recruiting for the public and not-for-profit sector, so they know what's required. Okay then, well, I might kick off with Pushika. So Pushika, I understand that you are working in the not-for-profit sector. Can you tell us about your current role, the industry you're working in and what you've studied?
Yep, sure. Thanks for giving me this opportunity, Michelle. It's great to have all of you join this event today. So I'm currently working as a caseworker for a non-for-profit sector, and as part of my role, I engage mainly with clients who have mental health conditions, basically assisting them. It could be with things like financial counseling. I don't do financial counseling, but connecting them to that service or connecting them to services that could be helpful if they're at risk of homelessness, or linking them to psychologist services and etc. I also I had completed a Bachelor of Psychology at Macquarie. And what was the other question, Michelle?
I was asking what you'd studied to get there.
Yep, so it was a Bachelor of Psychology that I studied, and I also did a bit of like volunteer work as part of being able to complete the requirements of this role. And I think the other question was which sector I was working for. So it would be considered the social services sector.
Okay, that sounds really interesting. So how did you end up in your current organisation? What was your career pathway? And why did you choose to work in the public or not-for-profit sector?
So my career pathway involves doing a range of things that I did before, deciding to become a caseworker. I was a peer mentor when I was studying at Macquarie, which kind of gave me an opportunity to see whether I would enjoy counselling, because my job does involve a bit of informal counselling. I also worked as a support worker with organizations such as Alliance Community Higher Up. And I also happen to work at Macquarie University as an administrator at various departments. And I think just having that exposure to different places and having the opportunity to gain different skills allowed me to, I guess, be where I am. As to why I chose to work in the non-for-profit sector is just that I think I really, I'm very passionate about mental health, and the background that I come from, there's a lot of stigma that surrounds mental health, but it's not something that stopped me, but rather inspired me even more to go beyond that and be there for my community and its people. And I think that, and also, I guess, making difference to my community and its people would be the reasons, one of the reasons as to why I chose to work in the non-for-profit organization.
Oh, that sounds really good. I really hope that you're enjoying your work there. What have you been working on today?
For today, I am working on an NDIS application and basically speaking to a GP and psychologist to, I guess, get the documents in support of my clients' applications. Also calling a few calling a few of my clients to see how they are doing generally, and also calling a lot of different services to identify referral pathways for my clients and linking them into that service.
Oh, that sounds great. So what's the most important advice that you can give students who want to work in the not-for-profit sector?
The most important advice that I would give to students would be exposure. I think just exposing yourself to different kinds of roles and industries might give you a good opportunity to not only develop your skills, to also, I guess, do a trial and error to see if this is the right fit for you. Because sometimes there can be certain roles in the non-for-profit, sector where you do have to see a lot, and you do have to be quite resilient and kind of be the person who doesn't take the problems back home. We do have like a lot of tricky situations that I do see on a day-to-day basis. So I guess just having that exposure to like different roles, because maybe the caseworker role might not be for you, but you might still want to work at the non-for-profit sector. Maybe it could be the IT department. So I guess just having that exposure to different roles and different industries might give you a good understanding of your own skill set, and also develop more skills and, I guess, decide what you want to do.
Oh, thanks, Prashika. That's been really interesting, and I'm sure the students here really appreciate the insights that you've given us. I might switch over to Madeline now, who's a current Macquarie University student who's been offered a graduate role in the New South Wales Public Service. So, Madeline, can you please tell us what attracted you to work in the public sector?
Yes, so I'm currently working as a graduate with the Department of Education in the New South Wales Government Graduate Program. And so I initially applied for the graduate program because I have a background in working in a corporate commercial law firm for 3 years whilst I was in the main part of my law degree. And the work-life balance didn't really appeal to me. I was working 14-hour days while still working studying full-time. And I knew that my career progression, if I stayed in that industry, would follow the same trajectory. So currently I'm contracted for 35-hour weeks, and anything above that, I get paid back in flexible leave. So I don't have to touch annual leave or anything else. It's really rewarding work and actually making tangible and measurable differences. It's really fantastic job security in the public service. There's a very big push for staff development and training and making sure that you are the best work, producing the best work that you can. And there is honest diversity values, which isn't quite so tokenistic, that comes from a lot of corporate companies. So yeah, a lot of those combinations really appealed to me to work in the public service.
Are you working for a lot of different government departments, or are you just working for one?
So the program is 18 months with 3 6-month rotations. So my home department is the Department of Education, and then I will move to a different department in August for my second rotation for 6 months, and then I'll return to the Department of Education in a different area for my third rotation.
Okay, that sounds great. You mentioned that you've studied law. Was there anything else that you studied that helped you apply for a graduate role? Or
Yes.
what did law do?
So I studied a combined laws and social science degree, and that specific combination really allows for a broad range of understanding and skills to sort of be applied in a multifaceted area. So when you're applying for a role, a little bit of everything and the ability to apply your skills to multiple areas is really valuable, rather than having specific honed knowledge in a concentrated area. And it allowed me to apply for multiple roles in multiple areas and have largely the same set of skills and knowledge be applicable and easily transferable across a broad range of areas and roles and jobs. And it just meant that your greatest skill as a graduate is sort of your flexibility and your suitability for a role. And those skills can, if you can apply those skills to a broad range of areas, you'll be very attractive in fitting a broad range of areas that they need help in.
Well, that's good. That sounds like keeping your options open is the way to go, and not being too stuck on wanting to work in a particular area. You can always move about later on as well once you've got some experience. Do you have any actual tips for students who are seeking grad roles in the public sector, and what's the secret of your success?
So, I mean, specifically for the program that I'm in, a lot of the graduate programs are highly competitive. So the government graduate program has about between 5,000 and 6,000 applications each year for about 150 roles across the department. It varies each year depending on what the department needs. But for me personally, it wasn't so much of a focus on your actual grades, which a lot of corporate and private jobs are interested in. So it was more of a focus on aptitude testing and situational placements, how you would respond to certain situations, group working, and interviewing was more of a focus. I actually didn't submit any academic transcript for my job whatsoever, which I think a lot of people really appreciated. That it's more so the other values and your ability for intelligence and your capacity for learning than it is your book knowledge. But for the interviews, a lot of it was the STAR questioning, so the situation, task, action, resolution. And I found that if you there's generally a job capability for each role that they will publish. And if you take each dot point under the capability and find an example of how you satisfy that capability through a situation and how you've resolved it, you'll generally be quite suited and quite capable in answering how you've satisfied the role, and to just be prepared and confident to back yourself.
Well, thanks, Madeline. I think that's some really valuable advice for our students. I'm sure everyone appreciates. So thank you very much for your time coming here and sharing your experience with us. I might hand back over to Sue now, who will introduce the other panelists.
Thanks, Michelle, and thanks, Bashika and Madeline, for those insights. They're really quite insightful. My questions will be to you, Helen, for the moment. Can you please just tell us a little bit about Street Work, what your organisation does, and to start off with, thanks.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. And I thought I might just start with a little bit of a story about me, and then that will lead me into the organisation. I'm a graduate from Macquarie Uni. I won't tell you the year that I graduated, but it was in the 80s. And I think I did a science and education degree, and taught for a number of years, using those skills. And I think, I also completed an MBA through the MGSM. So I'm absolutely a fan of Macquarie Uni, and probably evidence to say that, the path that you start on doesn't necessarily mean that that's the path that you end up on either. So, I probably realised when I was graduating that I wasn't going to retire as a school teacher, but I still think that the education and, my first roles as a school teacher made me a better person for my future, employment prospects. So let me tell you a little bit about street work. So street work has been around since the 1980s, its main purpose is to support vulnerable young people in the community to turn their lives around. So we work one-on-one with young people 11 to 18 who are affected by drugs, alcohol, homelessness, mental health, suicidal ideations, school disengagement, and even those young people that have got themselves in a spot of bother with the police as well. And through our one-on-one mentoring program, we employ qualified youth workers who work directly with the vulnerable young people to set goals to address the risk factors that are affecting their lives and so forth. Look, we probably help around 300 young people per year. And I often say that we are boutique in size and boutique in nature. So we cover the Northern Sydney region, and lots of people think that, that being a high socioeconomic area, how could you possibly have any young people that need support? And I can reassure you that, sometimes, income or money can be an enabler of risk, not necessarily a protector of risk. So, so we cover all of the Northern Sydney region, as far, north as the Mooney Mooney Bridge. We go south to the Harbour Bridge, west Rydalmere, and then every place in between. So, and look, it's the most fulfilling role that I have ever had. So I think that, it's really important to realise that when you graduate, that's not necessarily going to be your only job and the only direction that you take. So I think it's important to have an understanding of that.
Thanks, Helen. That's a great overview of what your organisation does, but also just the background about yourself and how you kind of, how your career journey has, progressed over the years. Really great insights there. Can you tell us a little bit about what you look for when recruiting for graduates in your type of organisation, and how students can stand out from the crowd?
Absolutely. I think a key thing to remember is that your degree will stand on its own merits. So, whether it's an education degree, social work degree, law degree, or it can be a psychology degree, you've got that because you've worked hard and you've been able to fulfill the requirements to be able to be awarded that particular degree. For us, it's not necessarily your grades. And I don't think I've ever, a bit like, what Madeline had said earlier, I've never asked an applicant to give me a copy of their academic transcript, because when we recruit, we are recruiting for fit rather than for skills. So, so you might have a psychology degree or a law degree, but for us, it's around how will you fit? We're a values-based organisation. So, are your personal values aligned to the organisational values? And the other thing is that our end users are the most important people within our ecosystem. So when I say our end users, the vulnerable young people that we work with, are the most, valuable part of what we do. So lots of the conversations, actually, we have lots of our interviews informally over, in a local cafe, over a coffee and so forth. And it is around how, we actually are trying to figure out how will you engage with our vulnerable young people. So, so for us, it's around fit and, the synergies between you as a person. We know that you've got the, the qualifications because, you've met those requirements, but you as a person, how will you fit with our vulnerable young people and within our organisations. So, so the standout for me is that when we recruit, it is around, we are recruiting the individual. We are not recruiting you because you've got a degree in a particular area.
Thanks, Helen. That's really great advice. Moving on to the next question. Just tell us a bit about how your sector is responding to the challenges posed by COVID-19 and what students can do now to prepare for a post-COVID career.
It's an interesting question, and I often say, just for you to take a moment to reflect how you coped during COVID. And I normally get people to say, put their hand up, if you coped well, if you coped okay, or if you coped poorly, but that's up to you to decide what that answer is. And I often say that, functioning adults, suffered quite severely through COVID, and then other people didn't so much. But at the end of the day, the majority of us, and I'm going to put my hand up and say, I was okay through the first part, but the second lockdown probably impacted me more, and so forth. So, now put a layer on top of that, and let's think about the vulnerable young people that we work with. They're already, vulnerable because of other decisions they've made in their lives, let alone putting COVID on the top of over that. Their mental health, for many of the young people's deteriorated, their, drug and alcohol addictions, were still there, they were still scoring and so forth. Probably crime increased because as much as, a functioning adult was told to, isolate at home, a young person, will, sometimes be a bit rebellious and say, look, no. So many of them got themselves in a spot of bother with the police. And let alone the intense network or the intense pressure cooker that was happening at home. So for us as a sector, and it's a long way to get to answer your question, Sue, but for us as a sector, we have been busier than we have ever been before. So, the demands for services, and it's not just us, it's the entire sector, demand for services outstrips our ability to supply. So in many of the organisations that we partner with, wait lists are, off the Richter scale, and, really quite, bad for the vulnerable community that we all provide service to, because to tell somebody who has, who is, self-harming or has suicidal thoughts, for example, that they've got to wait 12 weeks before they can actually go in and see a psychologist is just not on. So, but that's the nature of the business that we're actually in at the moment. So it's quite, the sector is, under immense pressure. In terms of how do students cope post-COVID, my thing is that we need to just dive in now, and meet, the safety requirements, so that if that's a vaccination requirement or if it's around, PPE that you've got to wear, I always say embrace it. We've got to work, we've got to go with the flow rather than be rebellious. And at the end of the day, if, you're looking at working for an organisation that, you may not necessarily agree with their safety procedures around COVID, rather than arguing and trying to teach them a lesson, I would just say go to the next organisation that may have a different approach, because some of the sector can be driven by, bureaucracy. So, a government agency might have told us that we can only employ people who are fully vaccinated, including boosters. So, my thing is, the advice I would give you is prepare by embracing whatever the requirements are. And if they don't meet your values, then look elsewhere rather than, butting heads with that particular organisation.
That's really great advice, Helen. Really good for the students to hear that. Also, can you provide some tips to the students listening today about tips for students interested in working in the not-for-profit sector? Any recent trends regarding skills or experience that is required, particularly over the last 12 months?
Yeah. So in terms of if you're interested in working, and you'll hear it sometimes called the not-for-profit or the for-purpose sector. So it's exactly the same thing. It's the fact that we're not generating income for shareholders or an individual and so forth. Look, they are the most rewarding jobs I've ever worked, and so working at Street Work isn't my first role in the not-for-profit. I worked in a very large organisation prior to starting here. So I worked for St John Ambulance in with their volunteering component or division and so forth. Look, they're very rewarding. As much as the work is demanding, it's a rewarding role, and often my staff will share some success stories that that of the young people they have been working with, and they might only be minor to you and I, but they are major achievements to the young people. And it's amazing how that drives me even further. So I always say that landing the role at Street Work has been the best thing that has ever happened to me, and it's really because I can deliver more service and better outcomes for vulnerable young people. And that's really what, rows my boat, and excites me every day. So, it's really important to, figure out, and, some people will ring me up and say, look, I want to move into the not-for-profit sector. And I go, it's big, so you've got to start to think about, what do you want to do? Is it children? Is it aged care? Is it animals? Is it environmental? Figure out what sector you want to work in, and then start to hone in where you want to work and so forth. So look, some of the trends are, look, there's, again, there's, they talk about the post-COVID, turnover. We've been impacted by that as well. So it's around, people trying to figure out what do they want to do for the next stage of their life. And look, there's definitely opportunities at entry level to middle management to senior management. It's just a matter of where you want to go and what you want to do. But look, I always say, don't think of the not-for-profit sector as being the thing that you do at the tail end of your career after you've been successful in your corporate roles and so forth. Think about it throughout it, because it can actually give you different returns to just a financial or remuneration.
Thanks, Helen. Look, you've really touched on some great points in terms of the skills that you would need to work in this sector, and also aligning the values between the individual and the organisation, and is that person the right fit for the organisation as well? So that's really great. You did also just touch on some of the entry points for students to gain employment, but if you'd like to expand on that a bit further, that would be great.
Look, I think the other thing is also, if you've got a passion for a particular sector, and look, I'm going to talk about the youth, the youth sector, simply that's because that's the one that I work in. If there are volunteering opportunities, I always think that trying before you buy is a great way of trying to figure out, is this the right organisation for me, and am I the right fit for this organisation? So, if the the area that you're looking at entering has volunteering opportunities, put your hand up and do that first. And look, it's amazing how we've employed people that have come to us through our volunteer pathway, and then we wanted to recruit, for example, a youth caseworker, or or it could be an admin person, and because they've actually had a little bit of exposure to the work that we do, the way we operate and so forth, look, making the decision about, do we give this person a role, or somebody who's volunteered with us in the past, and we've actually got to know each other, look, that decision becomes a really easy one. So, my advice is that if you are looking at entering into the not-for-profit, is there a volunteering opportunity that you can both try before you buy? So I think that's really crucial.
Thanks so much, Helen. That's been a lot, some great advice that you've given to the students. I'll move on now to Christina, who works with Beaumont People as a recruiter. Christina, can you tell us a bit about, as an agency recruiting in the not-for-profit sector, how has this sector responded to COVID-19 challenges?
Yeah, thank you. And thanks, Susan and Michelle, for having me join today. So look, I think the one thing that I will say is we can't single out not-for-profits, because I think all businesses have absolutely had to adapt during this COVID-19 phase or these past couple of years. I think the thing with the not-for-profit space, what I would say is perhaps maybe they weren't as ready to adopt with this work from home. But as Helen mentioned, the not-for-profit sector has been inundated with work at the moment, no matter what space they work in, and so they've had to move quickly. And so the one thing that they have done is this work from home. Now, what I have seen is that not-for-profits have continued to adapt to this work from home piece and have kind of continued this flexibility around being able to have a hybrid work life, which I think is awesome. And I think, 2 years ago they may have not enabled that, but that is something that they are allowing for. I also think that the not-for-profits, yes, they may not pay as well, but they have, during this COVID-19, changed the ways that they have kept their employees kind of front of mind. And so we have seen a lot of businesses adopt like the mental health days. I know some of our clients have, reduced the amount of days and hours in the day, giving staff, a few hours off to kind of have some break and especially during that lockdown with families. So I think those are the important things that, a lot of our clients in this charity space have adopted to. I guess in terms of what students can prepare for, I would be saying adaptability and being set up to work from home, I think is really important. We don't know what's around the corner. And so being okay with the fact that you may be in the office today and then tomorrow you may be working from home. And as I said, adaptability is key. A lot of not-for-profits are still working through this whole virtual onboarding thing. No one's gotten it perfect. And especially at this entry level point where you are trying to secure your first job, it may be a bit daunting, learning on the screen, but knowing that, it's a two-way street and the manager on the other end is probably thinking the exact same thing. But yeah, those are probably the key things that I would say that I've seen.
Thanks, Christina. That's great. Definitely adaptability is something that students should prepare for. In terms of what tips you can provide to students with an interest in working in the sector, speaking as Helen did about any recent trends and skills and experience required, particularly over the last 12 months.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, and as Helen mentioned, I think what you need to do is really research and find the not-for-profit that aligns with your values and interests. I think the biggest question or the biggest thing that we find is, I want to work for a charity, and that's great, but what charity? Is it in the environment? Is it RSPCA? Is it the National Breast Cancer Foundation? Is it working for St. Vincent's de Paul? So really being able to make sure that your values align to them. In that interview, you need to be able to speak as to not only why you're interested in the role, but why the cause. And so making sure that you've done your research beforehand, because I guess, yes, it's amazing you want to be doing for-purpose work, that's great, but it needs to be a little bit more than that. There has to be a reason behind it. Helen already mentioned this, but volunteering, it's a great way to start networking, start meeting people in the sector. And sometimes it is who you know and not what you know. And from that, I know for a fact that we've recruited some high-level roles in this charity sector that they started their career purely as an intern. And so I think that's a great way to start. Definitely, I think also be confident in what you can offer. In this kind of level role, yes, you don't have 3 pages of experience that you can probably provide, but what you can provide is, tech savviness, resilience, and adaptability. And I think those are some really key skills that we're seeing our clients looking for at the moment. It's the best market for grad students right now. It is the sector, not only in the charity space, but in recruitment in general, it is busy. So why not take advantage of it and, start looking for those opportunities.
That's excellent. Thanks so much, Christina, for that. In terms of the best entry points for students to gain employment within the respective areas. Just tell us a little bit about that if you can.
Yeah, look, I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't say direct yourself to agencies like Beaumont People, and there are some similar organisations that specifically service this not-for-profit sector. We have connections and relationships with not-for-profits across Australia that we can leverage, and we become your advocates. We can support and work with you and making sure that we're finding the right meaningful role for you. A couple of other different avenues. For those that don't know, Ethical Jobs is a great job board. I know when I came out of university, everyone knows of Seek, Indeed, and LinkedIn, but if you're really interested in getting into this kind of for-purpose space, Ethical Jobs is a job board purely advertising, for these types of roles. Going back to what I mentioned, interns, great opportunity to get in there. You start out as an intern and you can be offered an opportunity, whether it's been fundraising administrator or a receptionist or a caseworker. So, and often, yes, they may be unpaid, but my philosophy is, sometimes short-term pain is long-term gain. So, that's the kind of things that we like to see on CVs. And look, I guess if you're looking for a job to put your foot in the door, I would like to think some of those donor care, supported care roles, your receptionist, they're the kind of entry-level opportunities that I think are always a good way to get your foot in the door and see where it goes from there.
Thanks, Christina. That is really great advice, particularly the volunteering and the internship tips that you've provided are a really great segue into not-for-profit or organisations generally. Look, Michelle, that wraps up my questions with Helen and Christina. Perhaps if there are any questions to the other panellists, we could open that up. Michelle, you're on mute.
Thanks. I just wanted to check with Nikki and Vicky from the careers area that we're in today. Are there any questions coming through on chat? Okay, so nothing at the moment then. All right. I've got a question I'd like to ask Madeline. What is it that you love most about your job? Madeline's just vanished. Okay, I'll try Helen. What is it that you love most about your job?
I'd say the greatest satisfaction I get is being able to, it doesn't matter whether it's, the fundraising element or the grant, writing or, the volunteer training and so forth. Look, it's around making sure that we get more advocates on board. So we view everybody as an advocate of vulnerable young people. So it doesn't matter where you are in the organisation, to give them the confidence to be able to then go and, speak to, somebody at a dinner party or somebody, a local politician and so forth. But I love the fact that, we can do so much good, to, vulnerable young people who would otherwise fall through the cracks and possibly, be a burden, through, having to, get into some public housing and so forth. So it's around then being able to provide young people with the necessary skills so that they can actually take ownership and, and they feel empowered to turn their lives around. So, I'm a person of, simple pleasures. So seeing that and seeing the joy on these people, on these young people's faces when they achieve something, is just the thing that probably excites me the most.
Well, thanks, Helen. That's great. I think Madeline might have rejoined us. Would like to ask you, what do you love most about your job?
Just that I'm making a tangible difference. When I told the partners at my firm that I was leaving, one of them actually said to me, she's like, "Oh, you're actually going to make a difference," So I think it's just, knowing that what you're doing is actually meaningful work for a lot of people, and it actually has the potential and the ability to change a lot of people's lives is really rewarding.
And that's great. I think that's a really important thing about working in that sector. I think we have a question that's come through. are volunteer organisations, volunteer positions usually listed on an organisation's website? And if not, how does one find out about opportunities?
Do you want me to answer that one, Michelle?
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
Okay, fantastic. So many organisations do have volunteering opportunities listed on their website. So we have a dedicated page which is around our volunteer opportunities, but there are platforms that, and look, I'm just going to mention the two platforms that we use. So we use Go Volunteer and Seek Volunteer to advertise roles. So those two platforms actually have lots and lots, I was going to say hundreds of thousands, and it is probably hundreds of thousands of volunteering opportunities. So it's, you might go to the organisation, or you might use one of those platforms to help you find a volunteering opportunity that you're looking for.
Okay, I might ask Christina, do you have any advice on how to make your resume stand out, especially if you don't have any experience working in the not-for-profit areas yet?
Yeah, and look, mostly what I recruit are entry-level positions, and what I would say is, yes, most of the people I work with don't have or come with not-for-profit experience. I guess a good starting is a clear CV. I mean, one that's simplified, and one that's, as an entry-level graduate, should be no longer than 2 pages. At this level, I would be really highlighting any experience you've done with anything that's extracurricular, volunteer work, internships, whatever that may be. Secondary to that, I'm not, obviously a degree is great, but sometimes there's extra kind of studies that you've done. If you're in digital marketing, have you done a digital marketing course? Have you done anything that's gone above and beyond what the standard kind of education looks like to kind of further that degree? Those would be a couple of examples. Also a cover letter. A lot of people do forget to add this on, but often it's those 2 paragraphs that you add in that really kind of highlights why you want to work for that charity, or why you want to work for that role, can differentiate you between the other 30 applicants that have also applied. So that would be my advice. I would also be very conscious, again, different when you're applying directly through a company, but if you are working or working with an agency, be really mindful that generally applications are saved, and so often we can see people that are just sending through applications for all jobs. You have to really think about the ones you are applying for, because you want to make sure that you are being specific and particular, and not just going for anything. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, that sounds great, Christina. And something I'd like to add, there's also opportunities at the university that can help you get the experience you're looking for. At the moment, we've got volunteer roles going for students to meet and greet international students, or students who have come from outside of Sydney, and to take them around to show them Sydney sites and help them integrate with Sydney culture, to organise events and gatherings for them to get together and network. So there's those sorts of opportunities. As well, we're also recruiting paid positions for our LEAP mentoring, and that's where university students hook up with year 7 and 8 students in high school, generally from a refugee background, and help them as a mentor to get through high school and then later on into university. Okay, I see someone has asked, are cover letters a must for job applications? There are conflicting opinions as if they are essential or not. That's probably for Christina, I guess.
Yeah, and look, yes, I do agree that is a conflicting thing. Some people say, yes, it's necessary. Others say it's not. I think it is necessary. I think it's always good to get a sense of your writing capabilities, but again, also the reasoning behind why you are applying for this job. It doesn't have to be, 2 pages long, even a couple paragraphs is fine. It's also a great way for you to summarize your background and your experience. So I would say yes, is my take on that.
Yeah, well, I think it certainly doesn't hurt to include one, where it may hurt if you don't include one and it's what is expected. Okay. What sort of, I might ask Helen about this, what sort of networking tips can you give students who want to work in the not-for-profit or public sector? Are there any organisations that they can join to help them with networking?
I think that, so the answer, I'm not sure about that answer, Michelle, but I probably would say, if I was looking at, trying to network to decide where I wanted to land, look, I think that the key thing is, I'm going to go back to figure out what part of the not-for-profit sector do you have, an interest in, and what are you aligned in, and then source out the organisations that might be able to then provide you with those networking opportunities. So is it volunteering, or is it is it volunteering, or is it, or it could be that you want to pursue something in the arts and so forth. So, it's around then positioning yourself so that you get the best, the best skills you can possibly can. And I always say that you've got to put yourself out there. So, break down those barriers around saying, oh, I don't do speed dating very quickly, or I'm not a great networker. You're going to have to put that behind and put yourself out there, because look, I have to agree with what Christina said, is that we don't want to know what, it's not what you know, it is around, who do you know within the, I call it the atmosphere that we operate in, that can possibly give you some sort of a look in and so forth. So, student networks within the university are absolutely fantastic. So, because they will open up other doors, or it could be around, a business network that might happen in your local, area, because they're the people that are actually working with other not-for-profits and so forth. So I think it's, getting into those sort of networks to introduce you to other elements within the community.
I was just going to jump in, if that's okay, and just say another kind of, again, Helen, I have no idea if these things exist, but I was thinking association. So many of you probably don't know much, but there are specific associations for sectors. And so, for example, I know within the charity space, we've got one for the fundraising space, and that's the Fundraising Institute. So it's, and there's multiple different others for different roles within the sector. So sometimes connecting yourself with people within the association can be beneficial. The other thing that I would also say is LinkedIn. We are in this digital age, and making those connects with people in the sector via LinkedIn could be a good way to get yourself out there as well. Is another recommendation.
Okay, we've had a question come through from Helen, which was just talking about a moment ago. Students said they'd like to work with young people, but they don't want to be a counsellor or a caseworker. And what other career opportunities are in this sphere that you could think of?
I refer to our youth work as being our core business, but every organisation you work with, so every not-for-profit, still has a finance arm, an advertising arm, policy, and procedures or admin, arm of the business. It can be marketing, fundraising, it's not just service delivery to the end user. There's a whole lot of other, parts of the, and I call it the, the machine that makes the, makes the business function. So if you're going to go and, become a marketer, you should also consider the not-for-profit. If your skill set, if that's what your skill set, is in, and you're aligned to the values of that for-purpose organisation, because those skills are, are transportable across sectors and across organisations. So, so it's not just, what I would call end service delivery, that there are all those other functions that make a business or an organisation operate, there's definitely those opportunities as well.
Okay, we've had a couple of questions come through asking about the low remuneration rates in not-for-profit organisations, and they're saying that young people don't have a lot of resources, so that might be why they're attracted to places that have high remuneration, and that they might only be able to consider not-for-profits towards the end of their career. Well, that certainly hasn't been the case for everybody, because in this group today, we've had Maddie and Pashika, who have both gone on to work in the not-for-profit sector, one in the not-for-profit company and one with the public sector. And I think they're both fairly happy with their remuneration. Maddie, do you have any light to shed on that?
Well, I think in the public service, they're very well aware that they need to remain competitive with private companies. So I think a lot of the benefits come that the remuneration is is absolutely adequate, especially for a graduate. And it's extremely transparent with remuneration, especially with bands, with grades. So there's extremely good career progression and transparency regarding equity of gender. So you fall into bands depending on your grades. So from remuneration perspective, it's actually quite competitive in the public sector.
Okay.
I would also just say with the charity side of things, sorry, Helen, there is added benefits of salary packaging. So yes, they may pay, 5 or 10K less than what you would get in a private job, but there is the added benefit that the salary packaging does have an impact on the tax that you pay, which overall actually does add significant benefit. I would also say that having worked in an agency where we recruit for charities, but also we have private clients as well, the charity space have done incredible with the added benefits. I mentioned this to you earlier. A lot of the clients we're working with have given additional mental health days, additional weeks of leave. A couple of my clients, after the lockdown, offered their staff an extra week over leave over Christmas. That was in addition to their additional 4 weeks of annual leave. So I think it's not all just about the salary. It's sometimes looking at what else are the other additional benefits. And I feel my clients in the charity space have done really well in kind of coming to the party with that.
Okay, that's great. Had a couple of other questions. One is, what's the best way to find organisations that align with your values? Christina or Helen, would you have any advice in that regard?
Shall I start, Christina? So, look, I think first of all, I'm going to say that you've got to figure out what your values are, right? So you've got to start there. So, because nobody can tell you what your values are apart from you setting those and so forth. So then what you need to do, once they're clear in your head, you can then turn around and say, look, I actually want to work with an organisation that values the experience of a young person, or it could be the experience of somebody who's come from a family violence environment, or it could be somebody that an organisation that values diversity and so forth. Once you've figured out what your values are, let me tell you that you doing a little bit of research on organisations, those values will pop out very quickly, because once you know what you're looking for, an organisation's website will then have those values front and centre, possibly on their homepage as well. So I think that my tips are figure out your personal ones first, then go looking for an organisation's value and see where the alignment is.
Great, thanks, Helen. Well, we're getting close to the end now, so I might just do a quick wrap up. Any final words of advice for our students? Maddie?
I just wanted to say, believe in yourself and back yourself when applying for grad positions. A lot of graduates are in the same boat. And I think being aware that every skill and attribute you have is valuable and attributable to a job.
Great, thank you very much. And Christina, any last words of advice?
Look, yeah, I just say, making sure whatever not-for-profit you do move into, it aligns to the values that you have, and making sure that, you're going in there for the right reasons.
Okay, and Helen?
Look, you're the only person that knows yourself. You've got to be your biggest fan. You've got to be, the promoter and so forth, and be your authentic self. So, and I think that comes across in any interview with any, whether, it's your first interview or not, you just got to be yourself, and the rest will, fall into place. And you've got to make sure that you can promote all your skills. So those are the, these are the skills that you might have also acquired along your life's journey. So your school, things that you've done at school, your local sporting club, or it could be your, the local, a sporting club or any other club that you're might involved in, and it's being able to translate those into a skill that makes you more attractive.
Yeah, thanks. That's very valuable advice from all of our three panelists there. I'd like to just ask Sue if she can bring the last few slides up.
Oh, sorry, can I just add something quickly?
Yeah.
About volunteering. I was just going to say, so I'm in my 5th year of a biodiversity and conservation degree, and I'm currently doing volunteering for an NFP, and like my advice would be to other students is if you're able to do 3 units instead of like full time, it would allow you the opportunity to be able to do some volunteering and like take the pressure off a little bit of like full-time studies. So that way you will actually be able to, if anybody is concerned about like not having enough time to being able to do those opportunities, then that's what I would recommend to other students.
Okay, thanks, Rosanna. That's really valuable advice for students as well. Okay, so what's the next step that you can do now that you know what we have to offer? Try and get involved. You can explore Employability Connect. It's our huge employment site about workshops, resumes and interview advice. You can book a one-to-one consultation with a careers advisor. You can access hundreds and hundreds of resources on there, and you can find out about the student employment program, which finds jobs for students on campus or nearby graduate positions. We also have a LinkedIn group at called Macquarie University Career and Employment Service, where we often have opportunities there that might be of interest to students, so you can check that out. And you can always email us at careers@mq.edu.au and we can help you there. So remember, we're here to support you throughout your degree journey. And we just have a Facebook group that just started up this week in Careers Week, and it's called Macquarie Employability Connect. And we're going to be posting lots of information there about events and jobs and opportunities for students to develop themselves. So we recommend you go along there and join us. Now, Careers and Employability Week is nearly over now on Thursday, but any of the sessions that were held on Zoom are available to be watched later on because we've recorded them all. So we'll have them up on both Employability Connect and the website within the next week or so. So we've got things on Employable You, which talks about things like GLP, the Global Leadership Program, and PACE, information on successful startups, how to find jobs with our student employment area, more information on PACE, standing out to employers and making your resume stand out. There's one for students with disabilities or health conditions. And we also have one running on how to market your skills in ePortfolio, which all students here have access to. And there's a graduate research panel that's just started a little while ago that you might have information on, and building your Australian Network of International Students with Study New South Wales, which is a government group that's there to support international students. So there's still time to go along to that one if you think that'd be helpful, but most of the rest of them are recorded and will be up, and the information will be up very soon. Okay, and just to remember, the Big Meet Careers Fair is happening on Thursday, the 24th of March in Darling Harbour. The universities have now banded together after COVID. We used to have our own individual careers fairs, but we've now found it's probably simpler and easier just to have one big one that all the employers can go to and all the university students can go to together and see everything in the one place. So it's running from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. It's free for students, and there'll be a lot of government not-for-profit organisations there as well as private organisations. So we recommend everyone to go along, whether you're an undergraduate or graduate. There's a lot there that you'll be able to get out of it. And you can go to www.thebigmeet.com.au if you want a bit more information about it and to see who's actually going to be there. Okay, well, I'd like to say thank you very much to our panellists. Prashika had to leave us. She had another commitment, but we thank her and appreciate her for being there. We also thank Madeline Gahan, Helen Banu and Christina Lesko. We really appreciate you coming along today to help us with our panel and to give that information to students. And I also thank Nikki and Vicky for being there as well to assist with answering questions. Okay, well, that draws our panel to a close, and it's 2 o'clock. So thank you to everybody and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.